Hey guys, it's 258. Welcome back to of Apples and Magic. Today we're going to read chapter 11 or 12. I'm not quite sure, but we're almost at the end. I think I just need like one more chapter, which technically in the story in the thing there's two, but I'm just going to combine them because it's just part 1 and part 2. But let's just begin with of apple fields to be sowed. Let's hop right into it. After partying for a long while, with many toasts being held in their honor and many more words of wisdom shared, Twilight and Applejack finally departed from the party to the cheers of their guest, with their married friends looking on as she went into the carriage and was led away. You know they're totally gonna bone each other tonight, right? Rainbow asked as they watched the carriage head on to the train, getting a chuckle from all the others. Of course, Kaden said mischievously. That's what the honeymoon is for, after all. Thanks, Alessia, that's over, Applejack said, tossing off her fancy gown as though it were muddy clothing, strewing it across the bedroom of their hotel in Los Pegasus. Their trip prepaid by Twilight's parents, they glad here was chosen for their honeymoon, with a place to have fun and unwind, just what the two needed after the week of pure stress before the wedding. I still can't believe what we had to go through all that just to get married. I mean, for Pete's sake, we could have just gone to and gotten hitched at some little place instead of that big old gaudy thing. Applejack said, going and laying on the bed with a pleased grunt. So I giggled. Well, we did what we had to do, and the result was the same either way. We are married now, Applejack. We're forever one, and nobody can ever change that, Twilight said, having taken her own dress off and neatly hanging it in the closet, alongside grabbing Applejack's off of the floor and doing the same, as she sighed happily at the moment of forever being Applejack's and Applejack being hers. She lay down beside her mate, meeting her lips with Applejack's in an intimate kiss. Applejack didn't put up any resistance whatsoever to Twilight's advances, only giving a quiet, pleased moan as Twilight's tongue slipped past her relaxed jaw, quickly meeting with her own. What followed was a brief tingle of tongues, fighting not against each other, but instead working to bring its partner in dance as much pleasure as possible. It only heated up more as Twilight rolled over on top of Applejack, feeling her wife go slack underneath her, letting her take over as her tongue softly pinned Applejack's to the bottom of her mouth, though they both won in this tussle. After a while, Twilight pulled out of her mouth with a smack of their lips, both staring into each other's eyes. Amethyst, staring into Emerald once more. Twilight, can you take the spell off now? I'm way more than ready, Applejack said, her voice more than lustful. I need you so bad. Wait, what? I need you so bad. I've needed you since it first started. Twilight lit her horn, and a moment later, Applejack moaned as the unpleasant heated feeling in her belly lit like a pyre from ashes, her urges swelling from passive want to desperate need. Oh, hey, maybe I should have had you leave that spell on for a little longer. I almost forgot how horrible being heated is. Applejack moaned, her hoof immediately trilling down her belly as she started to rub her swelling, moistening slit on reflex, giving a quiet whimper at the pleasure the contact caused. Listen, Applejack, I didn't want to use the spell on you any more than you wanted me to, but it had to be done if you wanted to keep loyal to your promise to yourself and your parents. I know you didn't plan on going to he a couple of days early, let alone at the last days of our wedding preparation, but I couldn't take you having your foal after marriage away from you. Twilight said, gently nudging Applejack's rubbing hoof aside with her own, taking it over, earning a louder moan from Applejack as her slit winked her hips, humping into the hoof of her lover. Yeah, no, it was needed, but I wish you could have grown yourself a cock and rid of me right then when I first went in my heat, right in the middle of that whole big group of ponies, Applejack said, remembering they'd been in the middle of a planning meeting with Celestia and a few planners when Applejack had asked Twilight out to the hallway with the scent of a heated mare been more than obvious by the time they'd entered the hall. Twilight had planned to use the heat quitting spell as a temporary band-aid to fix her heat during the meeting, but Applejack and she had been so busy that the spell had to remain on constantly, or having to endure the mental torture of not being able to but sate herself with her hooves for 2 days due to Twilight being constantly busy or both being exhausted. Applejack was ready to be rid like a mare in her first heat, and Twilight was only too willing to do so. Applejack, you know that wouldn't have ended well. Not only would you have gotten pregnant before we were married, but you would have embarrassed yourself in front of the princesses. Applejack only huffed. I don't care. I know the princesses go into heat still, even at their age, so I know they know what a bad heat's like. She paused, gave an extended moan as Twilight started to rub her winking clit with a hoof, her whole crotch now saturated with her fluids, even going so far as to give little gushes of it out of her and onto the bed and her tail, also well coating her lover's hoof and her honey. Wow, you must have it bad if you're squirting, Twilight observed, keeping the rubs firm and going deeper, parting her mare's lips with her hoof as it tried to suck it inside. Of course I have it bad, sweets. You've never been able to rub yourself much in your heat for near 3 days while you're in mine. It's telling you to grind yourself against anything that looks even kinda hard, Applejack asked, her tone a mix between frustrated and pleasured. Twilight, you're huffing enough this time. I need your tongue or your cock. I don't care which, Applejack ritually begged, giving another squirt as she waited for Twilight to say her. Twilight nodded and quickly positioned herself in the 69 position as Applejack lay on her side, and Twilight did as well, aligning their crotches to each other as Twilight immediately dug in, pressing her muzzle tightly into Applejack's winking slit. Applejack let out a carnal growl of pleasure as she felt Twilight going down on her like she had to her during Twilight's own heat last month, making Applejack's mind blink as she started rubbing her clit with her magic, alongside making her tongue plunge as deeply as possible, her fluid spraying on her lover's face and coating it with her lust. Applejack did her best to lick Twilight's slit, but each time she tried, another intense pang of pleasure rolled through her as Twilight rubbed her clit with each rapid wink, making Applejack jerk in pleasure at that powerful stimulation. It was after only a minute of the intense, unrelenting licking and rubbing that Applejack tensed up and cried out as she was overtaken by a very intense orgasm, her fluids gushing out of her and onto the bed, leaving her moaning like she'd stubbed her hoof. Twilight knew very well that pain wasn't the reason that Applejack was moaning, however, feeling her winking constantly and shuddering as she clearly came hard, her powerful inner muscles sucking on her muzzle as though to draw it inside. Nearly a minute of constant pleasure that turned out to be 2 orgasms head to head, with Twilight not having relented much even as she felt Applejack in her throes of release. Applejack finally relaxed a bit as her body flushed with warm satisfaction of orgasm, her desperate need quelling for a moment and letting Applejack feel the first semblance of relief that she felt in the past 2 days. But still she felt that passive need for more even as she recovered from 2 intense orgasms in a chain, the need for her mate's seed. Wow, sugar, your tongue's just as good as I remembered, Applejack said in a dazed tone, softly panting as she recovered from her minute on a cloud 9. Knowing that Twilight was almost as worked up as she was now, watching Twi's marehood winking slowly at her, calling her to continue her earlier attention to it, Applejack continued to lick deeply, but slowly being treated to very pleased moans from her lover. She knew that she needed Twilight more, needed her to rut her senseless and cure her heat, the old-fashioned way. But she also knew how unfair it was to be left wanting. She'd been left needing Twilight's intimate touch for over 3 days, after all. Applejack continued to make out with her wife's lower lips, feeling them occasionally squeeze on her tongue, that paired with her winking and pleasured moans telling Applejack she was right on track. After a while of gentle licks, Applejack curved her tongue upward, finding that small, spongy patch of flesh inside of Twilight, then felt her tense up and moan even louder, feeling a flurry of wings kissing her nose as Applejack licked her G-spot, the farm pony's hoof softly rubbing her wife's cutie mark. As she felt the squeezes grow more rapid and felt Twilight tensing up some time later, hearing her moans and gasps rising as pitch as Applejack continued to rub that most sensitive spot, she heard as her mate cried out and grabbed around her head with her back legs, keeping her buried deep into her orgasming slit. Her hips rocked against her for a good while, Twilight riding out a rather nice orgasm as her fluids oozed out around Applejack's muzzle and onto the bed. Twilight slowly relaxed, letting a very satisfied coo as Applejack gently pulled out of her, instead gave her a stifled kiss. As Twilight rested in her afterglow, Applejack's breeding urges kicked in again as she nuzzled her muzzle into Twilight's own, running a soft lick on the nose from her and making her shudder. Well, we both know what oral will only be a temporary relief for your heat as well, hooves, Twilight explained, her eyes lighting at the applications, feeling Applejack wink against her, once more rubbing hoof in anticipation. You're right. If you don't mind, could we move right along to you reading my brains out? It'll be much appreciated, Applejack said as she felt the burning in her belly resume even after the double orgasm, knowing only a stallion's seed would satisfy it fully and permanently. I'm ready to have yet. I'm ready to have your full now, Twilight, my wife, my love. Twilight soon stood on her horn lip, feeling the familiar stretching in her lower belly, as well as the familiar masculine guest taking residence in her mind soon after. Well, Applejack moved from underneath her and lay on the side of the bed with her croup on the edge, leaving herself prone on her back. Twilight felt as she grew the penis and balls that would indeed give Applejack her full, shuddering as her new instincts picked up on the fertile center of her mirror and making the length start to snake out before it had even been fully formed. Keeping her concentration on the spell despite the growing cloud of lust in her mind, Twilight kissed her mirror as she stood then again laid over her, pinning her down softly in the mattress. As the spell finished and left her endowed with a stallionhood once more, she felt it grinding against Applejack's lower belly as she softly thrust her hips on reflex to Applejack's pheromones flowing through her now, calling her to breed her fertile mare, to fill her with the seed so she could later watch her belly later swell with her full. Come on, try, breed me, knock me up with your full. I've wanted to feel your baby making come in me ever since we first did this during my heat, and every time you redded me with the safe spell, but I couldn't let myself get pregnant till we were married, but now we are. You're mine forever and I'm yours, Applejack proudly stated, my love. I don't want you to rip me till you can't come no more. Applejack then felt as Twilight's memory very quickly hardened and pressed into her lower belly, and teats as she lay atop her, feeling her hips grinding against her and letting the heated mare feel every of its 8 inches throbbing between the two, feeling the pre-cum it was producing in mass matting the fur. I want all of your hot full batter in my oven and making a bun. Twilight snickered then responded to Mare's desire as well as her own by sliding her hips back and pressing her flare against her, very wanting Mare's marehood. Feeling it winking against her and giving her swollen head kisses in the only way it could, without any further teasing, Twilight slid fully into her mare, feeling all at once embraced by her warm insides as she easily hilted within seconds, feeling Applejack's slightly dilated cervix kissing her glands now, her whole well-lubed passage welcoming her in and milking her for her sperm already, her lips and clit winking against her pelvis. In response to the stimulation, Twilight quickly pulled out and plunged back in again, hearing a very deep moan from Applejack. Twilight herself gave a hearty breathing whinny as she claimed this fertile mare as her own, hers to plant her seed in and make grow ripe with full. That's right, Twilight, I'm all yours, Applejack encouraged, her whole body tingling with the pleasure of being bred in heat, with the promise of getting a foal, this time making it feel just that much better. Just don't stop humping, and don't you dare pull out at the end. Twilight was only too eager to fulfill her mare's demand, her hips rocking on their instinctive path, their chests grinding together as Twilight continued to thrust. It wasn't long until Applejack wrapped her forelegs around Twilight's crest and pulled her tightly to her muzzle, meeting her lips in a kiss as her tongue snaked inside. Twilight gave no resistance as she kept rutting her wife, her hips working on instinct as she bred, her whole body overwhelmed with pleasure, and even more so when Applejack's tongue dueled with her own, sending another snake of pleasure to join the constant stream burning through her being. Yeah, I just like that. Harder, Applejack encouraged, and the increased pants of their soaked crotches meeting together, the slap of Twilight's balls meeting her flank, was a reward. Twilight could feel Applejack's passage rippling over her uncontrollable reflex to the stallion hood deep within her, encouraging her stallion to come inside her, both of their mind awash with the sensations. For what seemed an eternity, Twilight kept running at a rapid pace before suddenly hearing Applejack give a whimper. Try, Applejack squealed with Twilight, then feeling her insides clamping down on her cock and keeping it terror inside of her as she came again. Twilight was forced to stop dead inside of her as she tightly kneaded her length, her body trying desperately to bring her stallion to climax with her, then draw his seed within her. She held her own orgasm though. Yeah, even as she felt herself starting to flare in reaction to being gripped so tightly and milked, wanting to make this honeymoon one they'd always remember. As soon as Applejack loosened up enough for her to move again, Twilight kept her hips rolling smoothly, earning another pleased moan and deep kiss from her mare. The extra thick, extra slippery witness the Applejack's release had a lift only made her deep thrust them much deeper and more fluid, letting Twilight sink balls deep with each and making Applejack feel her against her deepest barrier with each tilting, making her lust-addled mind realize that her request for Twilight to come directly into her womb wasn't as far-fetched as she thought. Twilight, you're doing perfect. It feels so good. Applejack cooed, feeling herself approaching her third orgasm, also feeling Twilight growing larger in her, knowing it wouldn't be too long before Twilight also reached her own limit if she was starting to flare. As she thought more about that sensation deep within her of her passage being spread wide to keep all of Twilight's cum deep inside of her, its sole purpose to make a seal against her cervix to make sure all of her wife's lovely sperm went into her womb and got her pregnant, knowing nothing would be done to prevent that. This time, Applejack felt her third climax closing in. Applejack, I don't think I can last. I'm gonna soon. Twilight stumbled out, her body starting to tense as she felt Applejack growing tighter with each thrust, knowing by the almost unbearable tightness in her pelvis that she was on the brink. Applejack felt as Twilight flared fully and her thrust grew rapid and non-rhythmic, her flare spreading her inmost passage taut and her length pulsing heavily, knowing she was on the edge. Do it. I love you, Twilight. Make me a mama, Applejack passionately whispered, and with what Twilight slammed home and whinnied. Knowing this was what they both wanted, Twilight came well hilted inside of her love, instantly being overwhelmed by a huge wave of pleasure that made her whinny out loud. Biting Applejack's neck softly and seeking a crest to hold that simply wasn't there. It was wonderful and horrible at the same time, as orgasm always was for her. She felt completely out of control of herself as her hips sharply hooked her inside of Applejack, then felt as her hips jerked out and back in again, each one preceded by a huge gush of thick, very viral cum from her. Her large flare giving the full batter nowhere to go but up and into Applejack's oven. As Applejack felt that very specific pulsing and the hot, thick, wet feeling splashing deep inside of her, and thought of the implications it brought with it, knowing this was real, viral seed instead of the sterile semen she and Twilight had used before, she cried out and wrapped all of the hooves around Twilight, holding the mare she so loved tightly to her at that penultimate moment, pressing her lips tightly to her life mates as they came together and now undoubtedly conceived a child. Her pleasure washed over in a tsunami, anything close to a sentient thought flushed out by pure primal satisfaction. For so long they came together, Applejack feeling as that warmth pulsing and spreading deep into her belly overwhelmed the previous heat, dousing her estrus and making her whole body crying in joy at that sensation. Her breathing instincts overjoyed that sensation of a foe being pumped into her. Twilight only gave a couple of last weak humps before remaining hooked again. After what felt like forever, but couldn't have been more than a minute, with Applejack feeling completely contentedly filled up and her body utterly satisfied, Twilight finally stopped pulsing within her. She remained deep within Applejack on instinct, her flare pressed against her deepest wall and plugging it to keep her seed within her, so her little swimmers could reach their only goal of her egg. After she'd given her last, Twilight collapsed onto her love, pressing her into the mattress and giving her a feeling of slight submission that Applejack believed every mare should have after being bred. That was certainly the hardest I've ever come, Applejack said, even still feeling twinges and aftershocks of her orgasm rolling through her, even sometimes leading to full-on contractions on Twilight's still buried dick, earning a moan from her and a pulse from her stallionhood. I ejaculated my semen directly into your uterus during your estrus, Twilight said, feeling a certain pride at such a fact. If that doesn't give you our full, I don't know what will. Twilight then gazed into her wife's eyes, seeing them smoldering with her love for her, knowing her own eyes burned with the same passion as well. She loved Applejack with all of her heart and knew she did the same, so much that she was willing to bear their child. I love you so much. I love you too, Twilight Sparkle, Applejack said before meeting Twilight's lips in a much softer kiss this time, their lips softly smacking as they kissed heavily, lovingly, with Twilight still buried to Applejack's core. I get to have a foal, Applejack said proudly. A hoof reached down to rub the side of her lower belly. I get to have our kin. I've always wanted to carry a foal of my very own, and thanks to you, I can do just that. Twilight smiled as the undoubted aftermath of the breeding once more came to her mind. She and Applejack were going to have a foal, and lovely, beautiful foal that was a little part of both of them. I know carrying a foal and having a family is just as important to an apple as farming, and I'm just glad you chose me to give you it. Hey, I can see why those two mares wanted to have a foal together so badly that they invented a whole new type of magic for it, Twilight nearly whispered, nuzzling into Applejack's mane. If it felt anywhere near as lovely and satisfying for them to know they were having a foal together with the mare they love as it does for me, I'd move the planet just to make it happen. That's beautiful, Twilight. This is beautiful. That's getting me a little bit teary here. After that, they simply snuggled for a while, being as close to one pony as possible, kissing or nipping affectionately while they rested, admiring each other's presence. After a while, Applejack felt that faint burning of her heat returning, knowing it'd likely keep coming back for a while until the sperm took and she was impregnated. Twilight was still rock hard from the constant gentle kneadings Applejack's vaginal muscles kept up on reflex, urging the stallion inside of her to go another round. Hey Twilight, you think we can go again? I'm more than ready. Twilight only grinned. I want to do it pony style this time. You'll bet your flink I do. The night was still young, and Applejack was still very much in heat, something Twilight resolved to quell again and again. The end. Well, I'm gonna say that's a successful honeymoon for them, but it's a tiring reading for me. Man, it's been quite a while since I've done these, especially back to back. Anyways, guys, thank you all for listening. Doing what you guys do. Sorry about, I guess, this week's reading, since the first part was like, for some reason I coughed a lot, and I don't understand why. Anyways, guys, hope to see you in the next one, and hope you all have a very good day, night, whatever the heck you are. Somebody's in the kitchen apparently. Anyways, see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.
100,000 stories have filled my head as I look for the answer.